So let's continue in Siman 31. Who is up now?
I think I was.
Great.
Okay, and I'm going to do my best to keep it to 20 minutes. You can let me know how strict you want to be.
All right.
Okay.
Well, actually, I should say that it can be 20 minutes is good, but Asher can't. I don't think he's going to be here tonight, and he's the last one. So
30 minutes.
So we already have you have already 29 minutes exactly. Oh, I see. You have 27 minutes.
Amazing. Okay. All right. So I'm going to share my screen. Of course, that part's not so exciting. So I thought that Yavni did an excellent job with the Gemara last time. So Yavni, you get the Alana Mantel 2 thumbs up. And I'm going to do 31, 5, and 6 are fairly linked. So I'm going to do a really quick review of 31, 5, and then we're going to launch into 31, 6, and then we're going to make a chart. And I welcome you all to voice your opinions, correct me, add to my chart. I completely welcome your thoughts here. Okay, so 31, 5, this is again a quick review of what we did last time. The translation is from Safaria, so you can, if you don't like it, I'm not offended. And can I get a volunteer to just quickly read all of 31, 5? Is anyone in the mood?
I can. Okay. Should I start?
Yeah, please.
Cool. Hamer li isha, התקדשי לי בתמרה זו, התקדשי לי בזו, התקדשי לי בזו. אם יש באחד מהן שווה פרוטה, הרי זו מקודשת, ואם לאו, אינה מקודשת, אלא מספק, שומעת שווה תמרה אחת פרוטה במקום אחר. So someone who says to a woman, be mikudeshet me with this date, or with this one, or with this one, if any individual one of those dates was a shabbat pruta, then she's mikudeshet. And if not, then she's safek mikudeshet because it's possible that one of them is worth a pruta elsewhere.
Right.
Imamar la hitkadshi li b'zo b'zo b'zo. Kulan mitzarfot, im yesh b'kulan shava pruta mikudeshet, v'im lav ina mikudeshet ela mitzafek. And if he said, be mikudeshet to me with this and with this and with this, they all combine towards the value of a Shabbat Pruta. And so if all of those together that he indicated are with a Pruta, then she's Mikudeshet. And if not, she's not Mikudeshet. Well, she's Safek Mikudeshet for the same reason as before. Maybe altogether they're worth a Pruta elsewhere. Hayta ochelet rishona rishona. Im yesh ba'achorna Shabbat Pruta Mikudeshet. V'im lav ina Mikudeshet ala misafek. שאותם תמרים שאכלה הריהן כמלווה ומקדש במלווה אינה מקודשת, שאין קידושין אלא בתמרה האחרונה. If she was eating them one by one as they were being given, if the last one remaining is a Shabbat Pruta, then she's Mikudeshet, and if not, she's not, because eligible again, if not, then she's Safek Mikudeshet, because the ones that she already ate become like a loan, and we don't do Kiddushin with a loan, and so the Kiddushin only happens with the last Tamar.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I tried to do, the yellow is the action, and in the blue, it's the consequence in my imagination. So these are things that the man is doing or saying, and then the blue is what happens. And then I just basically wrote over here, if he says, I'm just going to do one possibly annoying fine tuning. Your translation was excellent, but I was going to just say in the first part there, he's saying, Hitkadshi li bitamara zo, Hitkadshi li bezo. So each time he's saying the word Hitkadshi li, which I think is significant, or if you want to say that it's not significant, I would say, hold on to this idea in your mind, and then you can argue with me to say it's not significant. But I do think it's telling us something. So great. So if he says it, Hitkadshi li bezo, Hitkadshi li bezo, we look to see if one of them is worth a pruta. And if he's saying Hitkadshi li bezo, 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 all of them are joining together. That's the, in the 29-minute presentation, that's the quick version of 31.5. And then we have a few more ideas here, like, is she eating them, what happens there? You know, is there a suffix? Is it alone? So we can get into these. I'm going to say this is the slightly more nuanced lesson, and we can come back to those ideas. But the quick version is, we learned last time two particular things about what the man says and the consequences. Okay. And I'm happy to share. If any of you want to look at the document and play with it yourself, I'm happy to share the doc with you. Just tell me. All right, so now we're moving on to 31.6, today's lesson. I don't think I have it in me to just pick on people to read. So if one of you is willing to volunteer to read, I'd be so grateful. Go for it. Yavni, I think your hand was up.
אם אמר לה, התקדשי לי באלו, ואכלה אותם ראשונה, גם אותם שאכלה מצטרפות לשווה פרוטה, כיוון שגמר כל דבריו קודם שנתן לה כלום. אם כן, מיד כשנתן לה הראשונה, בתורת קידושין בא לידה, ומדידי כאכלה. So, should I translate? If he says, be betrothed to me with these, and then she eats them one at a time, even the ones that she's already eaten do join with the do combine in order to make the unit that should be worth a puta, because he said he finished all of his statement before he gave her anything. And therefore immediately once he gives her the first one, it is already coming into her hands for the sake of betrothal, and therefore from her own acquisition, not from something that she's holding for him, did she eat it.
You're doing great.
והוא הדין אם אמר בזו ובזו וגמר כל דבריו קודם שקיבלה אותם, כולם מצטרפות, אפילו אכלה ראשונה. And that's also what happens if he says the language you said in the last one, betroth me with this and with this and with this, as long as he finishes his statement before she takes one of them, then they all combine, even if she eats them one at a time. ויש מי שחולק בזה, and there are those who disagree.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to listen to you read Hebrew, first of all, and excellent. Thank you so much. So just to add a little more detail to this, so when he says, become betrothed to me with these, I'm imagining a man who has 10 dates in front of him, and he gives them all to the woman. It's all of these. Even if she's eating them one at a time or putting them into her pocket one at a time, we're joining them. The new thing here is that because he's finished speaking, that's the reasoning. So just like I did before, up here, 31.5, which we did last week, the yellow was what the man did, and the blue was like the result or the consequence. I did the same thing with 31.6. The yellow is what the man does or says. The blue is the consequence, right? Here we join them, as long as they have the combined value of a pruta. They're joined for the combined value of a pruta. And it's the same thing if he'd said with this and this, which is our other case, right? They all join together. So if a man has 10 dates in front of him, each one is worth more than 1/10 of a pruta, we join them together, and he's giving her a gift of 10 dates whose combined value is at least a pruta. Okay. The green here that I added is what's new this time. And what's new this time is the question of, did he finish his speech or not? Right? That's the new thing. Okay, so now, do any of you guys want me to share the doc with you so you can flip back and forth more easily than what's on my screen? Would that be useful? Josh, I feel like you're giving me a thumbs up. So copy link, done. All right. Hold on one second here. I'm going to pause the share. chat. Sorry. I know, you'd think I hadn't been using Zoom for almost 2 years. Okay, so I just shared the document with you in the chat, and you're all welcome to take a look at it. You can copy it, you can edit it, you can do whatever you want. Whatever's easier for you is great. Josh, did you see the link? Yeah, I'm gonna take that as a yeah. Okay, so let's keep going. You have the link. If you guys want to use the doc to scroll up and down, you're welcome to. If not, you're going to see me going up and down as best as I can. So here's my chart so far. Okay. And also, I actually debated doing the chart a little bit differently. So if you guys have different ideas and thoughts about how to organize this, I would not be surprised at all, and I welcome your opinions. But here's how I did it. I said we have the man's action of giving. And then A and B are, did he do it all at once? Like with all these, here's 10 dates for you. Or is he splitting it up? Being like, here's a date, here's a date, here's a date. And then on this side, over here, I have the man's speech. What is he saying? And I divided it into 3 of them. He's saying be'elu with these, which seems like a key word to me. Or he's saying bezo uvezo, which I called itemized. Because I could imagine it in different ways. Like he could be giving her the dates one at a time, or he could be designating them as he goes, but he's vizo is the key word, I think. And over here, yes, I meant completely. He's completely splitting it up, right? So this is what we heard in 31.5 last time. Hikachi li tamarazo. Hikachi li vizo. It seems to be a different action with a different consequence. Okay. That was me ignoring a work call. Okay, so here's what I think.
Wait, do you think the action is different on the part of the man between the end of hey and the end of vav?
It's a great question. So where would, I think, can everybody look at the chart on their own, or do we need to talk it through? I think, well, Rav Nachum, how about I give the my initial take, and then I would love to hear your fine tuning. Does that work? Okay, so here's my initial take. Okay, so my initial take is when he says be'elu, what we just learned in 31.6 is, as long as he finishes speaking, right? It seems to hang on his speech, right? As long as he finished speaking and he does the be'elu, that's the easy case, because he's giving her 10 all at once and he finished speaking, boom, mekudeshet. Right, so this is like the simple scenario. But then we have in 31.6, I'll scroll back up here. In 31.6, we really had 2 cases. He said, become betrothed to me with these, that's the be'elu, right? And then we also have the case where he says bezo uvezo, with this and with this, right? Either way, we're joining them all together. So when we go over here, that's the split. As long as he finished speaking, the items join. Boom, simple. Okay, next we have the bezo, he's giving them to her. I'm sorry, his speech is separate. And I think that this also in 31.6, it seems like as long as he finished, you know, some of the commentators are gonna fine tune this, but as long as he finished speaking, it joins. And again, as long as he finished speaking, even if he's giving them to her separately, it seems to join. In 31.5, in hey, right, we have something else. We're saying, as long as one of them had the value of a pruta, mikudeshet, done. Okay, I'm aware that there are other ways to understand it. I was trying to start off with what I thought was like the most clear or simplistic case, or clear or simplistic way of understanding it. But Rav Nachum, I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments.
Well, I mean, I just wanted to talk it out.
Yeah.
The end of hey, he's saying, he's giving her, what is it? It says, she's eating them as he's giving them to her, right?
Yeah.
So he's saying bezo, and then he gives it to her hand, and then she eats it. He said bezo, but what's going on in the end of vav? He's saying He's also saying bezo, 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 but is he putting it in her hand or is he like putting it on a table in front of her?
I know. We could have a more complicated chart with, is she receiving them and eating them each time, or are they just in front? Do you see it as two separate scenarios?
Well, because it says, well, if it's putting it into the hand and she's eating it as she's getting it, you see, what does it mean? What does it mean? She's ochla rishona rishona. I mean, he finished saying everything and putting it into her hand, and she's got now 10 dates in her hand, and then she starts eating them. I mean, if that's the case, then it's very pashut, no?
Well, I think over here, it's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer, but I have more info.
Okay.
And the more info is, over here, look at the top of 30 of Vav, right? If he says to her, when he says be'elu, even if she's eating them one at a time, right? The fact that he said be'elu makes them join, right? So if he says, here are 10 dates, become, Harayat Mekudeshet Li be'elu, and then they're on the table, or maybe they're in her pocket, but she's taking them one at a time, right? He's saying, as soon as he gave her the first one, it reached her hand in the status of betrothal. So when it says she was eating her own, basically all of them are now hers. Like, so if he says, here are these 10, become betrothed to me, the elu, if he finished speaking, all 10 are hers. She can eat them however she wants, one at a time. She can eat them, she can put them in a milkshake and have all 10 at a time, or she can put them in her pocket and have them later. I think the point is the transaction shifted to become her property. And now they're all her property. So it seems to me in 31:6, we're not actually so concerned with how she eats them, right? Because she's eating from her own property at this point.
So what's the difference between the first and second laws here? Just the language that he uses, or the action is different? Is the action different, or is it just the language is different?
What's the difference between these two cases?
Yeah.
In Vav? Okay, yeah. So
one he says bezo, bezo.
Yeah.
And then he gave them all to her? How are you understanding it?
So I would say it turns out you're not the first person in Jewish history to have this question. Okay, so let's move on. I think that's why I called my chart so far. So let's go on. Again, I'm trying to do the 29-minute presentation. So the final line from Even HaEzer from the Shulchan Aruch is, there's one who disagrees with this. Okay, so let's look at the commentators because they seem to fall out in different ways. And I should say that English here is I can't blame Safaria. This one's on me. And I really do welcome you all to correct me or fine tune my thinking. So we're a team. Okay, so the Chelkat Mechokek, can I get a volunteer to read that one? Anyone? I really can't pick one of you.
I'll be happy to read.
Thank you.
יש מי שחולק בזה. כלומר, אף שנגמר הדיבור, כיוון דלא נגמרו הקידושין עד אחר מסירת האחרונה, כיוון שחלקו זו מזו, כי אם כל אחד שאכלה, havele milva. So he's saying he finished all of his statements. This is, where is he talking? He's talking about the second case. I see, this is the question. When he says yesh mi shecholek b'zeh, presumably the Ramah is saying it's on the second din.
So let's translate, even though I know you all translate in your mind. So we're saying,
so okay, fine. So I have to understand. Klomar, after nigmar hadibur, even though he finished saying bezo, bezo, bezo.
Even though the man finished speaking, he said something.
He said something. Either it was bezo, bezo. Right. Kevan delo nigmaru hakidushin. Since the kiddushin doesn't finish until he gives her the very last date. It didn't really finish.
Yeah,
It's only like the thing is called on the end.
right.
Because shechalku zo mizo kol echad.
Okay,
What? Because they were separated, each one from the other.
right. So I think my translation.
Kol echad goes to the next phrase. Yeah.
Yeah. So Yavne, jump in. Or not. Even though the man finished speaking, he said his thing. He hasn't. The kiddushin is not complete until he gave her the final thing, because he's saying zo mizo, right? So let's go back to our chart.
Kol
And all
echad
the items,
right.
right, and everything she ate was alone. And we learned you can't get engaged with alone. Okay, so he's saying here, in a case where we have the zomis, let's go back to the chart and see what the Chelkat Mechokek tells us. Right, so he's saying in a zo cat situation, this is how I'm understanding it. I think what we just learned from the Chelkat Mechokek is in a zo, because the man's splitting it up that way, so it's a 2B situation. I think the Chelkat Mechokek is saying, I'm going to make a comment here. I'm just going to call him CM. No, it's when he finishes giving them. Are you guys with me on that one? Okay, a thumb from Yavni. Okay, so so far we have a problem with 2B. Reb Nachum, are you with me? Okay, so I'm going to scroll back down. And then I wrote, these were just my little comments to myself or to you, but he's putting a different weight on speech versus action, right? So the main text of Eben Ha'ezer said, as long as the man finished speaking, done, you're engaged, right? Even if his giving is in, piecemeal. He said, so like I'm imagining now, there's a man, there's a woman, there's a table, there are 10 dates on the table. And he's saying, become engaged to me with this, and with this, and with this, and with this. So we have these two opinions. It seems the halacha as he finishes speaking, but there are those who say, no, he has to actually give them all to her. The emphasis is on the man's giving. We don't care really that he finished talking or not. It's kind of interesting.
Well, but it's also because of how he said what he said. If he had said be'elu, then it wouldn't have been, then no one would have argued about it.
Correct. So it's
not just the finishing of the speech, it's that the speech is inherently divisive of the dates.
According to the Yeshmi.
According to the Yeshmi, exactly. According to the ones who disagree with this din, they say that the dividing happens by his statement, and I mean, I don't quite follow the logic of it. I have to say, I don't quite follow the logic of it. But she didn't eat them until she got them all. So then why is it alone?
No, I think she ate them. She ate them one at a time. As she received them. I think that's
so. Bazo is always going to mean she's eating them when he's giving them to her. Is that what's going on in this case?
Well, that's when it's relevant. Yeah.
That's the end of that's what Vav is talking about.
I think so, but I actually feel like if we wanted to have a chart with like split categories, like divide number 2 into she eats it and she doesn't eat it, would that be pedantic or is that helpful?
No, in Vav for sure it says kodem shekibla tam. So
right.
He
but
obviously
said her possession. Is it about eating or is it about taking possession?
Well, she certainly didn't eat them. She certainly didn't eat them. She didn't if she didn't get them in her possession.
Right, but what if she's putting them all in her pocket and saying thank you?
No, it says kodem kabbalah.
I think the difference is I think the question is whether you consider the kiddushin to have been finished when he finished his speech or when she got them all into her hand.
Right.
And if you disagree about that, then if you think that it would happen when he finished his speech, then he could say "Itkachili bezo bezo bezo," and then start handing them to her, and she can eat them one at a time as she's receiving them, and she's still mekudeshet because she's already acquired them when she pulled the first one,
Right, because
And
of
he
their
already said zo bezo bezo.
Well, that's the sound to say that it all works, that there's not a malve.
Right. And that's the
Because exactly. So the
mechaber.
case is
And then,
the case is that he says bezo bezo bezo. He put them down on the table, and then he picked them all up and gave them to her, and then she started eating them one by one. So why is there a malve there? Why is there a loan there at all? Because his language separated them.
right. He
I think
said,
so.
yeah.
Sorry, Yavni, go ahead.
No,
I think we're all agreeing. I think that his language is splitting up the action. But let's look at the Beit Shmuel. And I split it up over here because I think it's 3 different pieces of data. But would anybody be willing to read this one from Hainu Shigmar? Yavni, sold.
היינו שגמר דבריו ולא גמר הנתינה, סבירה לרמה, והי, דתלינן הכל בגמר דבריו, וכן משמע מהר"ן שמתרץ, דלא דמי לומר התקדשי לי לאחר 30 יום עיין שם.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to translate? Do you want me to translate?
Sure, I can do that. So those who disagree, which is to say that when he finished his speech and didn't finish the giving, and the Rama thinks that it's all dependent on the giving. No, it's all dependent on the speech, and so does Maran, and who explains that it's not the same thing as be betrothed to me after 30 days, which is a different case.
That was a different conditional situation. I'm not talking.
Right.
Okay, so that's what the Beit Shmuel is saying, right? I think he's basically saying, is this correct? The deal's, when he finished speaking, it's done, right? So the Beit Shmuel, in my opinion, the Beit Shmuel is saying, no, this is fine. They're mekudeshet.
Well, he's giving the sources for that opinion, for the first opinion. So far,
Yes, but he's so far the Chelkat Mechokek is the only person we have who's disagreeing with this.
No, the Chelkat Mechokek is just explaining the Yesh Omrim. He's not disagreeing. He's just explaining the
He's fine tuning. Okay.
No, he's explaining the end here where it says v'yesh mi shecholek b'zeh.
Right.
He's just explaining their opinion. But actually, I think at the end of the Beit Shmuel, I think is a very good explanation of the yesh mi shecholek.
So you're saying the Chelkat Mechokek it's not that I should understand him as he's personally disagreeing. It's that he's explaining why the disagreeers have an opinion.
Exactly.
Okay. So the people who disagree say no. According to the Chelkat Mechokek, it's about the giving. All right, but let's keep going here. So we had number 1. So the Beit Shmuel is explaining, no, it actually is about the speech, right? That's what we just had here. Okay, Yavni, can you read the Tosafot?
ולתוספות צריך לגמור הנתינה קודם האכילה. And the Tosafot say that you do, in fact, need to finish the the Beit Shmuel is explaining that it's the Tosafot who have the opinion that the Chelkat Mechokek was giving for the Yesh Mi Shecholek.
Yeah.
Wait, can I just jump in here again? I'm sorry, I'm overly eager, but I think what's going on here is that the giving, he's saying bezo, bezo, bezo. Each time he says bezo, he's putting one down on the table. And then he finished his whole statement. And then he's picking them up one by one and giving them to her one by one. So there's a complete division between the end of the dibur, but then there's and the end of the giving. And the giving is also not in a lump. The giving is also in stages. And that's where the question of a loan comes. Because do we require only is words enough to end the Kiddushin? Or is the Natina enough? Is the Tina the moment? That's exactly the question. And since the Natina here has been divided up by her eating in the middle, she's eating one by one as the Natina comes, so that's also called a malve.
Right. I actually think this whole section is telling us that this category is complicated, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
No, I mean, I think that's what they're fine tuning, right? We know if he says elu, it's a lot easier. And if he completely splits it up, it's a lot easier. The problem with he's saying bazo, what do we do? Right. And now we have these different emphases on the speech versus the giving. I actually had a probably more elementary question, which was is this line only qualifying this section, or is it qualifying the entire thing? I assumed it was only this section, but I was like, it's possible that that's not correct. I'm not entirely sure.
I think you're correct. I think you're correct.
Okay, great. All right. So let's finish the Beit Shmuel, and Yavni, you were doing a great job there.
ולכולי עלמא, אם אמר באלו, אז נגמר הדיבור, והנתינה לא נגמר, מצטרפים. כיוון ולכולי עלמא, אם אמר באלו, אז נגמר הדיבור והנתינה לא נגמר, מצטרפים, כיוון שלא חלקם ולא אמר בזו ובזו. ועיין בשג, דף תרמה, שפסק גם באלו, אם אכלה קודם, גמר הנתינה אינו מצטרף. So we have an even more extreme opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
So
how do you translate that one?
So everyone agrees, but not everyone, that if he says
everyone except the shot.
If he says these, then and finishes the speech, but then she only receives them one at a time. It doesn't matter that she received them one at a time, because that's 1b, I guess, because
in order to make them out, divide them up, you need to have also his dibur be divided and also her eating be dividing.
Right.
But if his dibur is a combining thing, then we don't care about the netina being a dividing thing.
Then as soon as she's taken one part of the elu, she's taken them all and she can eat them, and yeah.
Right. So it seems to me like the action is over here. What do we do when it seems like the way I understood is, what do we do when it seems like his action of giving is split up? He has a real problem. All right, I see that my time is over, so I apologize to everybody for that. The Biur Hagra, you can look at on your own. The Gemara, I really thought Yavni did an excellent job. My question for you is, what are the policy reasons for this? Like, what are we trying to protect against? Why are we thinking that sometimes the man's speech is what determines? And why are we thinking sometimes the man's action is what determines? Are we trying to avoid confusion on the part of, are we trying to give the woman more information and avoid confusion? Are we trying to have clarity for the man? Like, what's the motivation and what's the concern?
Well, I think we're trying to make the wedding be a final act and not if I could compare it to a sukkah, can't be the mafreya. We don't want to be on alone. We want the actions that we're seeing now, we want it to be a short, concise, clear action that's not relying on some previous events. Even if those events are not so previous, they're in a few minutes, but we want to limit the time of the marriages. We want to make it as a finite a point as possible. I mean, that's just an idea of, I don't know, you can use it or lose it.
Does anybody else want to offer a thought? I was trying to think of what a radical feminist position would be, and I'm not actually so radical, but I was like, I think from the perspective of the man and from we want to have clarity in society, right? It should be as soon as he finished speaking, he did his part, and the giving of the dates is in process, right? So as long as that process begins, it's done. From the man's point of view and from, the social element, it should be done. I was trying to think if there's anything there about like, is it about protecting the woman, or is it about the financial transaction, and we want clarity in that? Is that why we would say that the actual giving is more important? Like, let the woman receive all of her thing. I don't want her to get ripped off, right? What if he somehow stops giving in the middle of his, bezo, or his, when he's splitting things up, and now she's in this very awkward, maybe engaged, maybe not situation. But ultimately here, I think that the speech is prioritized because that's probably what witnesses could hear, right? If we're going, what Rab Nachum said, if we're going for social clarity and certainty, if a few dates are moving around on the table or she's eating them, it's probably difficult like to see or to tell. And probably one date looks like another date, right? It would be, if there are 100 dates on the table and he's giving her 10 of them, I don't know that a witness standing 5 feet away can really tell how the dates are moving or what she's eating, right? But I think we can all hear a man making a statement. So in that case, I don't actually think it's sexist, and I don't really have a feminist complaint. I think it's about the clearest thing for a witness to understand would be a man's speech. And that's why the majority of the opinions in the Shulchan Aruch seem to go with that as the deciding factor when they're in a zo v'zo situation.
Yeshikach, the nice point. Nicely presented. Very nice. Thank you, Ilan. All right, let's move on to Zion.
Okay, so I'm going to share a little PowerPoint. Oh.
Ilana should stop sharing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Go, Ilana. Okay. Let's go here. Second. People see it?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we are going to speak about halves. Okay, and here the question is going to be if we can marry a person, or we can do kiddushin if the person is, if you tell her, I'm going to do kiddushin with half of you, or something like that. Okay, so we're going to go directly to the sugya. It's in Masechet Kiddushin, and it's in, I think it's 7b. And I'm going to read it very fast, okay? So we don't lose so much time reading the Talmud. But I'm just going to read the cases that I put here in yellow, okay? So the question of Rove is, Chatzeich bechatzi pruta vechetzeich bechatzi pruta. So marrying, doing Kiddushin with half pruta, in order to have half of the woman, and telling her also the same with another pruta, with another half pruta, okay? So what would be complicated here is that you do have indeed one pruta, and you do have indeed the entirety of the person, okay? But it still it's weird. Then they ask, what is the din, mahu adin? And then they say, Odilma muneve olechu, which means the person is saying this, and it's going, and like while he's saying this, he's just counting the money he has in his hands in order to, how do you say, complete one pruta. Okay, so I'm like in front of a person, and I tell her, okay, this is half of you for half pruta, and this is half of you for half pruta, and then one pruta is just completed there. So this is, then we have this word, im timtzei lomar, which is going to be very important afterwards for the Beit Yosef, which could be translated as, if you want to say it, moneh ve'olech. So in a way, they accept this solution, that he's doing this, and then they have another case, which is, u chatzeich befruta vechatzeich befruta. So, sorry, chetzeich befruta vechetzeich befruta, which is 2 prutot for one person, okay? But when you're speaking to the person, it's like you're saying, okay, half of you for one pruta, half of you for one pruta. And the first case was half pruta for the entirety of you, okay. And then they say, okay, Mahu, what is the din? כיוון דאמר לה בפחותה ובפחותה, פסקה למילתה. So what they're saying is, okay, while he's doing this, maybe he stopped, or maybe you could say Dilma, perhaps, kol, oh, sorry, this is, you don't see, kol mone, kol beyomo mone veolech hu, which is, okay, he's doing this in the entirety, it's like in one day, and he's just completing the pruta, or he's just completing the person in the other case, okay? Is this too difficult? Clear? Okay, so Yavni, it's okay if you read only the Rashi. What is the definition for Rashi of kol beyomo, please?
הואיל ובדעתי לגמרו היום. As long as it's his intention to finish it that day.
Okay, so exactly. So this is what we should have in mind, that while he's saying all these weird ways of addressing Kiddushin, in his mind, his desire is to finish and to complete the pruta, or at least to complete the person when you're buying the person, when you're doing Kiddushin in parts, to complete it during the day. Okay, so that's important, and that's, I think, but then you could correct me, that has something to do with what we are going to see. I think it's Lamed Vav, Toch Kedei Dibur, that the moment you say, then you cannot come back. When you do Kiddushin, you cannot retract Kiddushin afterwards. It's just done, and then you need a get. Okay, so maybe it has something to do, and we're going to see that because we're going to do afterwards the videos. Okay, so we continue again with the cases. So we had one case, half pruta for half of the person, one pruta for half of the person, and here we have another one. Chetzeich bifruta ayom vechetzeich bifruta lemachar. Okay, so here we have, what's the difference with the other cases is that today one part and the next day the other half. Okay, and here they have again the same, the solution. Im timse lomar kol bayomo moneh veolech hu, and good. And the last case, the fourth case here is shnei chatzaich bifruta. So I tell the person, I do Kiddushin with you, I give you one pruta for your two halves. Okay, which is weird. But then here we have achavadai b'chad zimna ka'amar la, o dilma ein isha mitkadeshet lechatzein klal. And so if he said this at once and he gave him the pruta, or maybe we should just say that this is teiku, that we don't know what the answer is. Okay? Did you see the four cases? Do you have them in mind? So half of the person for half pruta, one pruta for each half, and the other was half today and tomorrow, and the last one is just a different way of speaking, which is I give you one pruta for your two halves. Yeah, and the Talmud doesn't know what to do, and the conclusion is that that's teiku. Okay, and we kind of understood that kol beyomo means that the person is kind of speaking in this way, but that in his mind, according to Rashi, he's trying to complete the person and the pruta, so it's shaveh pruta, during the day. Okay? Good. I'm going to assume you understood. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to go to the Rambam. Oh, no. Okay, so we have other cases that appear in the same sugya, which I just put some pictures, and then you say, Shtei benotecha lishnei banai bifruta, the same. I put a picture so it's just clear. So you have two children, and I have two of my children, and then we say, okay, one pruta for the Kiddushin, and then you say, Bai Rav Papa bitecha uparatecha bifruta. So I do Kiddushin with your daughter, but you also give me a cow. Okay. And the last one, which is Bae Ravashi ebitecha bekarkacha bifruta. Okay, so that I tried. It's difficult to put that in a picture, but it's kind of a you see it there in a way. Okay, so we're just going to focus mostly in the first 4 cases here before, and not the next ones. Okay, because the Beit Yosef concentrates more in those 4 cases. Okay, so let's go to the Rambam and to see how he understood the sugya. Yavne, I'm just gonna bother you because
Yes. Should I just read it?
yeah.
אמר לה, הרי חצייך מקודשת לי בפרוטה וחצייך בפרוטה, או שאמר לה, חצייך מקודשת לי בחצי פרוטה וחצייך האחרת מקודשת לי בחצי פרוטה, הרי זו מקודשת. So the
Translate until there, please.
Yeah. So the cases of each half of you for a pruta and half of you for a pruta, or or half of you for half of a pruta and half of you for half of a pruta, she is מקודשת. אמר לה, חצייך מקודשת לי בפרוטה היום, וחצייך בפרוטה למחר. If he says, half of you is betrothed to me with a pruta today, and half of you with a pruta, and the other half presumably with a pruta tomorrow, and half of you with a pruta tomorrow, or shtei chetziech bepruta, or the 2 halves of you are betrothed to me with a pruta. Shtei benotecha lishnei banai bifruta, your 2 daughters for my 2 sons. On 1 pruta, bitech mekudeshet li uparatech mechura li bifruta. Your daughter is betrothed to me, and your cow is sold to me with a single pruta. O bitech vekarkatcha, o bitech bitcha uvekarkatcha li bifruta. Your daughter and your land on a pruta. Bechol elu mekudeshet besafek. In all those cases, it's a safek kiddushin.
Okay, so according to what we saw before, just let me go back. Here, it seems that the conclusion of the Talmud was teiku, but for the Rambam, it was mekudeshet for the 3 or for the 2 first cases.
Right.
Yeah. However, for the other cases, he follows always the solution, or like the teiku of the Talmud. And he says that it's teiku, and I think it's like kiddushin lesafek, and so it's kiddushin lesafek, yeah. And then mekudeshet besafek. You want to say something?
What's the practical difference if it's safek or not safek? There is a practical difference.
So no, if it's mekudeshet besafek, she needs a get.
Because she doesn't need a get. If they live together, so what's the real problem? The real problem is if another man comes and marries her, if it's a vadai mikudeshet, then it did nothing. Then he did nothing. And we don't need to get from the second guy. It's just like you can't marry a married woman. He did an irrelevant action. But if it's safek mikudeshet, then he might be married, then she might be married to that second guy. We don't know. So then you'd have to get then you have a problem. And I think what the halacha was that what was it? I don't remember if it was the first or the second. It has to remain. But I mean, there's a difference. That's the main difference. Whether somebody comes along afterward and tries to marry her.
So when it says areizo mekudeshet, it's like vadai kiddushin, and when it says bechol elu mekudeshet besafek is.
Why do you think the Rambam paskin in the first 2 cases that it's vadai?
Well, it's the whole im timse lomar thing, right?
Yeah. That's
like.
But the first one was okay, but the second one is also the im timse lomar, no?
Right, no, so the whole idea is that with the im timse lomar, and Andres can explain this more thoroughly, but like there's the Gaonic principle that basically, since im timse lomar is based off of like building off of one of 2 possible situations, what you just said, and adding additional kushya, it's basically as if you've acceded to
I understand, but go back to the
2 things, right? So he's saying that those 2 things both build an intim silomar of like moneh v'holech, and so in both those cases, vadai it would work.
We go back to the Gemara for a second, Andre.
Yes. Which one?
One here. But this one, this intim salomar I understand, but why? And so, in other words, I understand that from this intim salomar, so that implies that we sort of accept this one, but then what are you going to say about this case? But then this case should still be in doubt.
And you have the odilma.
The second
Which are you
case,
saying? Which are you saying by this case?
the second case should still be in doubt, as far as I can think about it. Now, there's the first case we're
which one?
accepting. You're saying you're saying that the imtim salomar validates the first case, and the second imtim salomar validates. Sorry, the imtim salomar validates the first case, and the second imtim salomar validates the second case.
Correct, and that's
And then
why
there
you
are no
would say
more
specifically
intim
the
salomars.
right. So that's why you would say specifically those first two. He would poskin are vada kiddushin, and all the rest are zafik.
So really our Roman numeral 3 here should go after the green on the line at the bottom. The first line of the bottom section. Never mind. Forget it.
Okay, go on, Andrew.
Okay, so we're just going to see now the Rambam versus the Beit Yosef, okay? And then I'm just going to read. Ishitat. So he's saying that the shitat of the Rambam is shitat הגאונים, דכל אם תמצא לומר פשיטותה הוא, ואם כן נפשטו שני בעיות הראשונות, דכל ביומי מונה והולך הוא. Okay, so he's saying that what just Lexi explained, that every time that the Geonim Soanim Timtze Lomar, this is like an answer to the case. And so, therefore, with this Im Timtze Lomar, the first two cases were just answered with what they proposed, which was Beyomo Mone Veolech Hu. And Yavni read what it meant, which is that the guy has the intention to complete or the person or the pruta in that same day. Okay. Now he continues. ונראה דבכאן אין אפשר לומר כך דבעיה האחרונה שני חציך בפרוטה לא קיימה. So let's understand this. Do you remember that there was the fourth case here, which was שני חצייך בפרוטה? And so we just said that the solution was כל ביום מונה והולך הוא, which Rashi explained as הואיל בדעתי לגומרו היום. But in that case of the שני חצייך בפרוטה לא קיימה, היא בעין הראשונה ולא שייך בה, אם תמצא לומר ובה מסתברא למימר דמקודשת יותר מכולן. If we say that the solution was ביומו מונה והולך הוא, of course, in this case, when you just told her and you gave her the pruta for her two halves, she should be like the most mekudeshet in that case. And however, to that case, what does the Talmud say? It's a steiku. Yeah, and then he continues, and he just quotes the Talmud. Bechad zimna ke'amar odilma ein isha mekadeshet lechatzeich klal. This is the end of the Talmud. Vekevan de alta beteiku, and this is the solution of the Talmud. Kol sheken harishonot. Even more so, the first cases we just saw before. Ve'ein isha mitkadeshet klal lechatzein ela safek at kan lashon. Okay, and so we should say that all the cases should be kiddushin lesafek, mekudeshet lesafek, and not as the Rambam. Is that clear? Okay, now we're going just to continue with the other cases now. Now the case that half of you for one pruta today and half of you for one pruta tomorrow. So חצייך האחד בחצי פרוטה בכל הגפנה, פסקה לי למילתא, ולאף כלום הוא. אלא כשאמר לה כן, זה אחר זה מיד תוך כדי דיבור. Okay, and so now we begin to speak about this תוך כדי דיבור, which we have seen already, but we haven't seen written yet in the הלכה. וכן נמיה דאמרינן כל ביומו מונה והולך הוא. So here, I think the Beit Yosef is saying that this is what we call תוך כדי דיבור, is the solution that we just read before for the other cases that didn't work, but still, kol biyomo mone veolech hu. This kol biyomo mone veolech hu is like toch kedei dibur, okay? So when he said tomorrow and today, he's just saying that at once, and he's giving her the prutot, but he's just speaking that way, okay? לאו כל שאמר לה חצי הדיבור בבוקר וחצי הדיבור בערב. It's not like this wouldn't be the case if he told her in the morning and then during the ערב, אלא שנתן לה שתי פרוטות כאחד ואמר לי, התקדשי לי עכשיו חצייך בפרוטה וחצייך אחרת, התקדשי לי בפרוטה אחרת. וכמי באי לי, אין אמרינא דגמר בדעתי לקדשה, פלגה אשתא ולא מהני, או דילמה מונה והולך דאחי כאמר, נתחלו מהעידנא ולא נגמרו עד לאורתא, כך פירשו. Okay, and here what they're saying is that and someone help me, I forgot. Okay, so I think he's saying that the problem here is that we don't know if inside the head of the person that wants to do Kiddushin, if he's really, if it's sufficient to say half of the person, to do Kiddushin for half of the person, okay? And then he finishes, and when he completes
if he's actually trying to marry half of her, then that's not going to work. But we're not sure what he's thinking. Maybe he's not thinking that. Maybe he's thinking, I'm going to marry all of her and I'm just doing it slowly.
Right. / like we don't know whether he thinks he's doing like these two like discrete processes of marrying half of her versus like it's just like actually part of one whole long like but united process.
Exactly. So we just saw that the Rashi before explained that Beyomo was during the day, but here he continues the Beit Yosef and he says that Beli nir'e ki amrinan kol beyomo aynu bistam. He says it's just whatever kind of time. And this I didn't understood so well, but I think it says that it contains tomorrow also. When he says Beyomo, it's just it contains it. Or I don't know if it's saying it doesn't.
The meute means to exclude.
So it excludes, but then it
To
says
exclude
Atina.
the case, I think that's what it means. To exclude the case of Chetziech Bipruta Lemachar.
And then Ateinan, it contains it?
It came. I think it came, no?
Okay.
Atinan,
Okay.
Ati. It's
Yeah, so we come, we follow already.
We come. So I think.
Okay. And
what happens with toch kedei dibur? Is it if you say two things toch kedei dibur, the second thing cancels the first one? Or is that the question here? Where that you're not sure what you see?
That's the thing that can
No,
happen with toch kedei dibur.
That is true about Hogei Libra, but I don't think it's what's going on here. I don't think so.
So what
The question is,
what makes it difficult that it's toch kedei dibur?
so the difficult thing is to understand this kol beyomo mone veolech hu, and he says ze achar ze. If you say that immediately one after the other, is like toch kedei dibur. Yeah. But then you have all these cases where you can say for one half and then one half at night.
But the toch kedei dibur is a measure of time.
Yeah, I think it's what it helps it make it more likely to be a legitimate kiddushin. The fact that you've said a putah for review today and a putah for review tomorrow, if you set it all together, then that helps legitimize it.